will go on with now Alexei Malashenko, who is working at the Carnegie in Moscow. Actually, he's the chair of the Carnegie Moscow Center's Religion, Society and Security Program. Alexei Malashenko is a professor of political science as well as a member of the RIA Novosti Advisory Council. He serves on the editorial boards of the journals Central Asia and the Caucasus and Acta Eurasica, and the newsletter Russia and the Muslim World, and he is a board member of the International Federation for Peace and Conciliation. Alexei Malashenko is the author of many books, about 20 books in Russian, English, in French. By the way, I can testify that he speaks a very good French. And Arabic. And among the numerous books he published, I will mention several of them. One is Islam in Central Asia, which was published by Garnett in 1994. Russia's Restless Frontier, co-authored with Dmitry Trenin, which was published by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in 2004. Another book is Islamic Alternative and the Islamist Project, published by the Carnegie Moscow Center and Yesmir in 2006. And Russia and Islam, published by the Carnegie Moscow Center and Rospen in 2007, and quote the last one, My Islam, More Islam, which was published in 2010. And Alexei will talk today about Central Asia, Russia, Islamic connections. Alexei, the floor is yours.
Shall I stay here or?
Up to you, it's up to you.
If it's possible, I'll stay here.
Sure.
First of all, thanks to Nadir. We have to recognize that there are some parallels between what we have in Egypt and Middle East and generally in Central Asia. I don't want to exaggerate the problem of secularism in my region, in Middle East, but anyway, we have to recognize. But however, there is a difference, a very important difference, because in Central Asian countries attempt to create their secular line, their secular model, coming from the Soviet Union tradition, from the tradition of the communist Soviet atheism. And that's very interesting because from the beginning, I remember the time of the beginning of 90s, when in Uzbekistan, they said Uzbekistan is not Egypt. In Tajikistan, they said that Tajikistan is not Iran, and so on. But step by step, all presidents of Central Asia, they began to discover that they live in Muslim societies or semi-Muslim societies. And I know that, for instance, Nazarbayev, he was shocked when he began to understand that Kazakhstan, of course it's not Egypt, but it's not Russia, however. Well, and all these people, I mean Central Asian presidents, and those who were around them, they derived from the Soviet elites. They were educated on the Soviet time. And even they don't need the idea of secularism, because all of them, they were atheists. And suddenly they began to think how to marry Islamic tradition with state. Well, I saw practically all of them in the mosques. And just I couldn't believe that indeed they were believers, they were Muslims. Even Islam Abdul Ghaniyevich Akarimov, even in the end of the 90s, when he used to visit mosques, if you look at his face, just you couldn't think that indeed he's a Muslim. From that point of view, I can compare him with Yeltsin. I don't know what about Putin. Indeed, I don't know, because following the Soviet tradition in KGB, there was a lot of colonels, majors, even generals who indeed were Orthodox. It's true. That maybe it could be considered as a certain some deviation from the official Soviet ideology, but it was so. Well, Central Asia. Central Asia, indeed, they badly need, in the midst of 90s, to create a certain secular state, but they don't know how to do it. And of course, they, I mean all of them, they began to feel a pressure, religious pressure, because that was a time of rebirth of Islam everywhere. Would it be in Kazakhstan or Tajikistan, even in Russia itself? Well, everybody knows about it. But however, we have to divide, we have to see the difference between Central Asian states. First of all, when we attempt to understand the role of Islam and the problem of secularism, that it exists or not, we have to recognize that there are Tajikistan and Uzbekistan and the rest. Kazakhstan is just a post-Soviet, it's a Eurasian state, as you like. Turkmenistan is a very special case where Turkmenbashi attempted to replace all kind of a tradition by his person. He wrote Ruhnameh, who replaced Holy Quran, and that's what enough. I don't know what about at the moment. It seems, following some information, that then Islam began to move from Uzbekistan, from Afghanistan maybe, but anyway, Turkmenistan is a special case to my mind, and I don't know how it will evaluate. Now, just I don't know if Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, president of Turkmenistan, he is able to pronounce a word secularism. He's a dangerous one. As to Kyrgyzstan, we have different information, and those who live there, or if you have a chance to visit this country, this society, some Kyrgyz society, sometimes it seems that Kyrgyzstan at the moment is on the crossroad. I don't believe that in a couple of years or in 10 years they will get their Islamic state. But the situation is very, very unpredictable. But anyway, to my mind, the problem of secularism is much more important for Bishkek as it was 10 years ago. But also they continue to divide religion from the state. So what we have in Central Asia after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and why we have to talk a little bit about secular trend. First of all, it's of course Islamization, or let me be more correct, re-Islamization. Re-Islamization, in particular as far as the public life is concerned. In that case, of course, all some leaders, in particular in Tajikistan and in Uzbekistan, they are obliged to turn to Islam. Next, the role of a clergyman. Also, if we compare the role of imams, Uzbek or Tajik, well, clergymen in general, of 90s, of today, and what we had before, the role of a clergyman raised. Just as example, the relationship of Islam Karimov and Muhammad Sodak Muhammad Yusuf. In the midst of 90s, that was a special case. But indeed, in Uzbekistan, it was a very authoritarian regime in Central Asia. Islam Karimov was afraid of the leader of a clergyman. And of course, also he was afraid of the position of some Islamic authorities. Next problem is that all of them, maybe Kazakhstan is a certain exception, but not so big exception in this problem. But more and more they wanted to associate their countries and their society with Muslim communities, Islamic Ummah, not because they like Islam, but because they need money. And they had before problems with Turkey and so on. Just if we look at the logic of their geopolitical behavior, well, I don't want to exaggerate their links with Muslim world, but anyway, it continued to progress. In particular, and Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. As to Kazakhstan, of course, Nazarbayev speaks a lot about so-called Eurasianism. As to me, I don't believe in the existence of this ideology. It's very artificial, as well, by the way, as a Eurasian Union. But still. And the last problem why they had to, and they have to turn to Islam, it's the presence of Islamic opposition. Militant Islam, so-called. Of course, it's Tajikistan, it's Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan. By the way, because 2 years ago we have some terrorist acts, and as I know, some Nazarbayev, who is a very clever man, he began to realize that the presence of Islamic opposition is a certain reality. So it means that despite their former atheism, despite the secular model of state, they have to turn to Islam, and the two main points, what they do. It's a managing and control. And from that point of view, it could be compared to with Algeria, with Egypt, with Turkey, well, up to you. They understand that Islam in Central Asia, because they are some Muslim countries, it couldn't be totally isolated from the state, and they do what they can. Could we say that secularism, the presence of secular model, is becoming less powerful, I would say, than it was before? I don't know. I don't know indeed, but when we attempt to understand secularism in Central Asia, all the time we have to think about a progress of so-called political Islam. I know that a lot of my colleagues, for instance, like Olivier Roy, my friend from Paris, he denied a lot of time the presence of the existence of political Islam and so-called and so on, and fundamentalism. Even he wrote a book about the end of political Islam. He wrote it 11 years ago, it seems, but political Islam exists and it will exist. And because we, at the moment, all the time, last week, we speak about Islamic State in Middle East, about Libya, about everything. It means that it's all right, and it will continue. That is some short opinions. Well, I don't want to talk a lot about what they did in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, about their legislation, about how they wanted to exclude Islam from the political life, but at the same time to put it under control. But only one example. It sounds maybe ridiculous, so funny, but anyway, we have to mention it. I'm sure that we know the position of Islamic Party of Rebirth of Tajikistan. It's Islamic Party, yes, but it was registered in 98. Next year, Mohyeddin Kobiri, who was a leader who continues to be a leader of this Islamic Party, he recognized the secular character of Tajik state. It's very interesting. it means that even Islamic party, yes, as I said, testifies that it is devoted to the idea of secularism. I don't know if we have other examples on the post-Soviet space. I don't know what about the Middle East, but it's fun. Indeed, Islamic Party, and Kobiri, he said that the number of members of this party is 42,000 more. There is an idea that 300,000 migrants from Tajikistan who live in Russia at the moment, they are members of this party. But in general, it impacts on nothing. Tajikistan was official as a secular state, and it is. Well, I have time a little bit. Just if we dare to compare Central Asian model of secularism with what we have in Russia with Orthodox Church. Let's imagine that I know nothing about Russia. I know nothing about Central Asia. But we try to understand as a common picture. We have, in Central Asia, a certain religion. We have in Russia a certain religion. Well, two states and two models of secularism. I repeat, if I know nothing about them, and if I look both some regions, Russia and Central Asia, formally, to my mind, Central Asia is more secularized than Russia. Because Orthodox Church in Russia participates in political affairs, they pretend to be present in the model of education. They pretend to be within some Russian army. Indeed, this is a structure, which is very close to Putin's administration, and sometimes they attempt to impact on official political position of Kremlin. It's not a joke. When, for instance, Patriarch Kirill, he pronounced a speech in Государственной Думе, the Russian parliament, he attempts to teach them. They think about so-called, I would say, orthodox business ethic. They pretend to be main religion in the country. Don't forget that Russia is a multinational and multi-confessional society. Just, I don't know how it will move. But anyway, it's fun. But nowadays, Russian state or Russian political life is less secularized than in Central Asia, than, for instance, in Kazakhstan. Because Eurasianism, it's not a religion, it's something more. But we have special territories, Muslim territories in Russia. And if we compare what we have in Central Asia, and for instance in Chechnya or in Caucasus, wow, Chechnya or Chechnya as you like to pronounce it. It's something like a theocracy. Because Ramzan Kadyrov, indeed, he pretends to be at the same time, simultaneously, and secular leader of Chechnya, because before his title was the president of Chechen Republic, at the same time, indeed, he looks like as a religious leader. It's not a joke. It's not a joke, because he was an initiator of Shariat. Before he came to power, of course, they said a lot of blah, blah, blah about necessity to deal with Shariat, to use it. When he became a president, the next morning, he began to introduce Shariat in the public life. Mosques in Chechnya, all mosques are now political some centers, and he attempts to spread Islamic influence in all Caucasus. It's not a joke. It's a very special case. Meanwhile, he continues to be a friend of Putin. So look how interesting it is. Some more. In Dagestan, the biggest republic of Caucasus, of the North Caucasus, what we have? We have Sharia, some law who works. Indeed, it works. So why? Because of lack of legitimacy of a state, of administration, of local, some Dagestani administration. Because federal law don't work, economic crisis, social crisis, and so on. In that case, in Dagestan, a lot of people, I don't know how many, maybe half, maybe the 30%, but they continue, they turns to the idea of Islamic alternative, because a Russian model, Russian federal model with its Putin and Kremlin, it doesn't work. Or if it works very badly. So why we shouldn't, why it isn't possible to create, what kind of expression I can use, Islamic space. So within Russian Federation. And indeed, there is a trend in so-called moderate Islam among clergymen who are some loyal to Kremlin, to federal administration. Why not? Why not? Of course, we continue to observe all kinds of Russian laws, but give us opportunity to work, to live, based on Islamic tradition. So, if we compare what we have in Central Asia and in Dagestan and Chechnya, well, in Chechnya, no secularism. It's something impossible to imagine, but it is so. And in Dagestan, no one decision can be taken by administration, by president, by leader of Dagestan, Ramazan Abdullatipov, without he comes to clergymen and asks, not permission, but counsel. Okay? So it's about secularism, and if I have 4 minutes, yes?
Yeah.
Because you wrote that I have to say a couple of words, Islamic connections. Oh, I understand what does it mean, but it's not a problem of secularism. It's indeed a problem of Islamic connections. What I mean? We spoke about radical Islam, militant Islam in Central Asia, in Uzbekistan, in Fergana Valley, in Tajikistan, in Kyrgyzstan also. But let's construct a bridge from Central Asia to Russia, to Moscow, to Ural, to Volga River region, to Siberia, and so on. What we have. So what we can see. Islam Karimov, he pushed out Islamic radicals, a lot of them, maybe majority, to other countries. To what country in particular? To Russia. You know, Hizb ut-Tahrir al-Islami, whose center was in Fergana Valley, yes? At the moment, we have so many centers of Hizb ut-Tahrir in Russian Federation, a lot, 100. And not only and not only around Moscow or St. Petersburg, in Ural, in Siberia, in Tyumenskaya Oblast, everywhere. And because of the position of Islam Karimov, because of the pressure experienced on Islamic radicals in Kyrgyzstan, in Tajikistan, they are pushed and they penetrate, or so they live. It's better, so to say. So they live in Russia, and they demographic face or image, cultural image of some cities within Russia far from Muslim world, far from Moscow, but I repeat, in Siberia, in Ural, and so on, is changing. We have a lot of some mosques full of Uzbeks, Tajiks, Azeris, by the way, and domestic, some migrants who arrived from Caucasus, from Dagestan and from Chechnya. At the moment, we have a total new situation behind Ural and then Ural. I don't talk about St. Petersburg, about Moscow, whose a population, whose the Muslim population is equal to 1.5 million. I speak about some cities like Chelyabinsk, as you know, some Yekaterinburg, and so on. In some Ural, in some territories on Ural, federal, some districts, so the rate of imams in mosques who came from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan is equal, is estimating between 10 and 15%. Could you imagine such situation 10 years ago? The first mosque, Tajik mosque, in Russian Federation was opened 3 years ago, 2 years ago and a half. So where? In Vladivostok. The second some Tajik mosque was opened in Yakutsk, in Siberia. Just I don't talk about what we have in Tatarstan and in Bashkortostan. These are connections. This is a new. This is a new some direction of some connections. Well, it doesn't correspond with the problem of secularism. Just I'm not a specialist in secularism, but I repeat, because you mentioned Islamic connections, I try to present something, and I just but to finish, it's not a conclusion. It's not a conclusion, but I come back to secularism, to some bloody secularism. What I want to tell? It continues, and it will continue. What is the reason? What can break it? It's a revolution. A revolution, as say some Russian official propaganda, orange, some revolution. But this orange, some revolution could have a green light. I don't believe in it. As to me, never. I don't believe. I don't believe that we'll get in Central Asia a certain Central Asian supreme. So never. But 2 years ago we couldn't believe in the emergence of Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. So we have to be ready for the unpredictable development. So thank you.